and he got comprehensively beat this weekend. This is the kind of gap that you expect from a Max and a Checo.
Checo.
Actually, the Max and Checo.
Yeah.
That's the gap you expect.
This is a
There's
similar gap
just
between Lawson and Checo. Or Lawson and Max at one
yeah,
point, like, you know.
exactly. Anyways, talking about Lewis Hamilton. Okay, I'll set it up because for me, everything else is fine. The gap and everything I kind of expected because Saudi Arabia is not his best track. There was one quote that he said that I think he needs to be careful what he's saying because what he said was at the moment there's no fix, so this is how it's going to be for the rest of the year. It's going to be painful. If you're Ferrari
At
and you're
least he's
sitting
honest.
there, the thing is, if you're Ferrari and if you're sitting there in Maranello right now and you've invested what 100 million a year on this driver, and he comes out and says that it's going to be the same as it has been this weekend. What happened this weekend was he was around a half a second slower than his teammate. And what also happened this weekend was that he was 30 plus seconds behind Charles Leclerc. If How
Look.
does Ferrari justify it?
Well, look, Checo was 4 to 6 tenths off of Verstappen for they gave him 3 years. So, I mean, look,
Wasn't being paid this much.
he also wasn't the 7-time world champion. And I quote, according to Hamilton fans, one of the worst drivers on the grid. So, yeah. Well done, Hamilton fans.
Oh.
You've painted yourself a box. I hope you can fucking sleep in it. Yeah, just
My worry is not, again, my worry is not the adaptation process. My worry is, even for now at least, my worry is not that he's basically
no, my
comprehensively
worry
lost to
is the
Leclerc in
adapt.
every race.
My
I,
worry
I'll,
is the adaptation
I'll, I'll,
process.
I'll get to that. But for me, the biggest worry is, does he not know he's at Ferrari now? At Mercedes, these kind of comments are fine. You can do that. You cannot do it at Ferrari. Ferrari is they've again. You might be the darling of Ferrari when it comes to the marketing, the engagement, the clicks, the sale as well. But
Only
what
if you're performing, though.
that's the whole
That doesn't
thing. At the
last
end
in
of the day,
Formula
the
One.
stopwatch never lies, and he got comprehensively beat this weekend. This is the kind of gap that you expect from a Max and a Checo.
Checo.
Actually, the Max and Checo.
Yeah.
That's the gap you expect.
This is a
There's
similar gap
just
between Lawson and Checo. Or Lawson and Max at one
yeah,
point, like, you know.
exactly.
Like
You don't.
Sonoda isn't getting that gap, right?
Yeah.
Let's just point this out. Anyone who wants to go, oh, he's adapting and so on, that's fine. I get that. I understand that. But this is like Sonoda is closer to Verstappen in what we know is the trickiest car to drive on the grid, full stop. We know this. So anyone who wants to say, oh, the Ferrari's tricky to drive, go fuck yourself. We know the Red Bull is the trickiest car to drive, and Sonoda is closer to Verstappen than Hamilton is to Leclerc, right?
Mhm.
And Sonoda's not getting 100 million a year and is also not a 7-time world champion who has 20 years of experience in the sport. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but it's not good enough. And like, you know what? I would forgive this because I did set up this season that I thought this would happen. I think Lewis does need a lot of rope because he's switching engines. Like, there's a lot that
Everything.
he's dealing with, right?
13 years.
The problem I have with this is it's the exact same problems he had at Mercedes. It's not like it's different problems. It's the braking into corners. It's the exact
It's
same issue.
worse.
It's
It's worse.
changing the setups on the Friday into Saturday when everything's working
Yeah, yeah.
fine. It's the excuses of, oh, well, I think they're sabotaging. Obviously, he doesn't say it that way, but it's the same excuses, the same problems. It just, unless things turn around very quickly, I think Ferrari need to start asking questions. Like, it's
Okay. What ideally what would have been the Ferrari expectations if Lewis, when once Lewis has joined, at least in the first 6 or 7 races, they'd expect him to be within a couple of tenths of Leclerc, right?
well, you would imagine so, yeah.
Yeah. It was half a second here. It was around 6 tenths in Bahrain. It was
Bahrain,
around
yeah.
6 tenths in Japan. It was neck and neck in China, and it was, I think, a tenth or so in Australia.
Yeah,
And
and qualifying's one
Australia,
thing because
Leclerc fucked up at the lap. So
yeah, and qualifying's one thing because you're that's about car comfort and so on. Like you can excuse that to a certain extent, but
the race
it's kind
pace.
of similar in race pace. So
It's poor, honestly. And the
yeah.
biggest example was when Leclerc was in free air and when Lewis was in free air, and the lap times and the difference it made it. First of all, it made me respect Leclerc a lot more, but it made me think that what is going on here? Because you'd expect okay, a couple of tens, fine, that's acceptable, and that is something that you take it in your stride. Lawson has moved from Red Bull to RB. He's within a couple of tenths of Hadjar. Maybe sometimes he's quicker. Carlos Sainz, again, similar thing. They've adapted. I mean, Ocon as well from Alpine to Haas. Again, a lot of drivers. The point is, there's if the gap is a couple of tenths, that can be worked on with adaptation and everything. But if your baseline is this low, that's a cause of
The
concern.
the problem's going to be right, and I know where Hamilton fans are going to back this up. There's going to be 2 to 3 races, just like there was with George, where Hamilton will somehow clear or be clear of Leclerc, maybe
Yeah.
right,
I mean,
and
the
that's going
sprint
to be
in China.
used. Yeah, and that's going to be used as well, like he won the sprint, or well, he was second in Silverstone, and it's like, yeah, sure, but like Carlos Sainz beat Leclerc on his day as well. So like, what are you
More
paying the
often.
extra money for? Yeah, and Carlos Sainz was closer every weekend. So
Yeah.
Carlos was closer every weekend, and like this is the thing. Like this would be perfectly acceptable if this was Behrman. I'd say, okay, this is a new
I
driver
don't think
getting to
even that would be
ropes.
acceptable.
Maybe
Six
not, but
tenths is not acceptable.
you could excuse it more as like, look, it's 5 races. He's a new driver. He needs to get up to scratch. He needs to build his confidence. You don't have those excuses when you're statistically the best driver in Formula One. Like this just
Yeah.
isn't. This isn't acceptable, and I don't know. Like I said, I can excuse a lot of it up until the point where these are the same problems that he had for 3 years in Mercedes. So if they weren't fixed at 3 years in Mercedes, why would Ferrari think they're going to be fixed in a year in Ferrari?
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to be. And I think it's going to be one of those things where he's going to have 1 or 2 races where he does really well. And it's going to be like, yeah, I've found my way in the car again. And then the next week he's out in Q2.
What
And
do you
it's going
think
to be
is
like,
happening with him?
he can't adapt to these new cars for whatever reason. And I don't just throw that around either, because frankly, like Lewis has been brilliantly adaptable throughout his entire career in different eras, in different cars. Like even going from McLaren to Mercedes, but like just in general, he's been very adaptable, very good at getting on top of new regs. He just can't do it with these cars. And at some point, you're going to have to say, look, this just happens. I hate to use this example because people will hate this, but some drivers just can't adapt to these cars. And Daniel Ricciardo, for example, was one of them. And I think Daniel
Yeah.
Ricciardo's.
And he was also one of the late breakers.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's one of these things where that braking style just doesn't work, and Lewis seems either unwilling or unable to change his style. And
He admitted it, by
Leclerc,
the way,
yeah, and
this
Leclerc
weekend.
is brilliant for this, because what Leclerc does is Leclerc, and Hamilton's talked about this as well. Leclerc shows up, they put the car into whatever the fastest working window is for that track on the Friday, and then Leclerc just adapts to it over the 3 practice sessions. And he's brilliant at it. And Hamilton just is unwilling or unable to do that. What did he say exactly this weekend?
He said the same thing. He said that maybe I'm too set in my ways. And I think 4 years too late to actually say that.
Yeah.
My theory is what has happened with Lewis is look, it's not like Lewis was not an adaptable driver. 2007, 2008, different regs. 2009, completely different. Then we had the Pirelli tires, entirely different. You have to change your style. He did that. Then we moved to the turbo hybrid era. He did it brilliantly.
Even
At every
2017.
stage,
Yeah.
yeah. At 2017 was still the driving style remained the same. There wasn't much change, at least.
Yeah.
The problem with Lewis has become that since 2014 till 2020 or 2021, he had a particular driving style and the car was designed in a particular way. And he got what his view was, he went as fast as he could and he was comfortable. Since 2021, what has happened is, first of all, his benchmark has changed. First, his benchmark was George Russell, which is whatever everyone wants to say, he's a much bigger challenge than a Valtteri Bottas. And I'd even go ahead and say he's a much bigger challenge than a Nico Rosberg.
Yeah.
They're putting it out there. The the problem
I think
is
it's almost on par with Leclerc in terms of challenge. So I'm not really
100%.
surprised. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Mhm.
And both of them are better than Rosberg. Yeah. Go fuck yourself. Go argue with the wall. Because there will be a lot of people that are actually going to have issues with that.
Mhm.
What has happened with him is since 2021, and this was something that Mark Hughes pointed out, there has been a marked change in driving styles with almost every driver. Max does not drive the car the same way. Leclerc does not drive the car the same way. And I would actually suggest you guys just go back, search 2022 F1 testing, the race. And Mark Hughes pointed it specifically that Max, who was very aggressive on the brakes and had a style which was very aggressive in corner entries, here it has become much, much smoother. And again, with these kind of cars, that is the requirement and that is the demand.
Mhm.
Max was able to adapt. He knew what the demand was and he did so. And he did it in the very first preseason test. We are 4 years down the line and Lewis has not identified the fact. The reason is at Mercedes, he was just so headstrong with the fact that I drive the car this way, build it according to this.
Yeah.
And they continued to work on that. But the reality is that the ground effect cars are supposed to be driven in a certain manner. And if you're not willing to change, it's not going to work out for you. I think that 13 year, 12 years, whatever, 2014 till 7, 8 year period for Lewis, I think it has done him more damage in terms of the adaptability is gone than it has done to any other driver. Because he
Yeah.
is set in his ways. Look, if you have a dominant car, you're going to drive a car in a particular manner. It's not going to change, and you still think that is going to work. It
And
doesn't.
as you said, Mercedes were willing to completely change concepts to help him.
Yeah,
And Ferrari's not going to do that. Like simple as. Especially
yeah,
if Leclerc is performing, why would you change it? You know,
yeah.
like so yeah, I don't know. He's gonna have to do one of two things. He's either gonna have to adapt or he's gonna have to really hope that in 2026 the new cars work better with his style. Which they might, because they're less reliant on ground effect. But by then the damage to his confidence may be done, and
By the way, a
that's
clarification for everyone that has kind of been on Twitter and seen a lot of Lewis Hamilton fans exclaim that, okay, wow, the next cars they have zero ground effect. No car can have zero ground effect. No car can have zero ground effect. Even the normal cars that you drive, they have ground effect. So just
it's
to
just
put it,
30% less.
yeah,
It's not.
that's it.
It's not. No. It's still 70% ground effect.
Yeah,
Like
entirely. It's look, 6 tenths is the gap that is there right now, and that is what worries me. If it was
yeah.
a couple of tens and Lewis is nailing everything, I think Lewis would also be comfortable in that case. That okay, couple of tens, fine. You expect that. 6 tenths is what is worrying, and
It's too much. Yeah.
yeah. Plus his comments. I think the biggest problem is, and Fred Visser got a bit frustrated with that too. And the thing is, he's for now he's running around and just trying to put out fires. But you have to wonder for how long he's going to do that because he's getting nothing out of Lewis in this stage. And
Mm.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
Lewis right now. Lewis Hamilton in the championship, he's uh, he's behind Leclerc, he's behind George, he's behind Kimi Antonelli,
Yeah.
and that's just not good enough. Just
No,
not
I
good enough at
think
this stage.
I think like the thing is that people need to remember too is the major difference here as well is that Mercedes, at least in their mind as well, owed a lot to Hamilton. Ferrari doesn't. So, you know, Hamilton owes a lot to Ferrari in terms of paying them back
Money.
for the amount. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
that's how contracts work. They're paying you
Yeah.
100 million for you to come and deliver a massive amount. And as big as Hamilton is in terms of marketing, when you're not winning, no one gives a shit. We saw that very quickly with Vettel and Alonso and different drivers in the past. You can be huge names.
Alonso 2023, by the way, Alonso 2023. The biggest example was when finally he had a good car. Spain was literally they loved him. They came in huge numbers, and the last couple of years the numbers have gone down for a very
Yeah.
simple reason: he doesn't have the car. And
Yeah.
I think for Lewis, the biggest example is Alonso. Alonso has also driven in all these different categories, in all these different regulations.
For longer.
You don't,
Like,
yeah, and you don't see him struggle to such an extent. He is willing
That's
to
what
adapt, to change his style.
someone on my channel called me racist the other day because they were like, "Why didn't you call out Alonso?" And my
For
simple
what?
response to this is like, "What are you talking about? Like Alonso has adapted in these regulations. Are you talking about
Yeah.
this season? It's like it's 4 races compared to how many others he's done, whereas where he's done really good performances.
Yeah.
Hamilton has been underperforming since the start of these regulations. It's a completely different conversation. And it's
Yeah.
not about race, it's about performance. And my response to that is if you're going to come onto my channel and be racist, please don't come back. So, yeah.